good evening. Imagine tonight, as the sky settles into silence, you are listening not to a lecture, nor to a firm conclusion, but to a story carried gently across the dark. Out there, beyond the glow of our familiar sun, a traveller has slipped quietly into our solar system. Astronomers have named it Three-Eye Atlas, a name that sounds at once cold and mathematical, yet also echoes with myth. It is what we call an interstellar object, a fragment arriving from another star, a distance so vast that light itself would need millions of years to make the journey. But what if it is not only ice and stone? What if within its darkened shell lies something else? A structure, a message, or a memory not born of natural forces? We cannot know for certain. Science has only begun to measure its path, to record its reflections of light, to speculate on its composition. Yet human imagination wanders further, asking whether Three-Eye Atlas might be more than a fragment of frozen dust. Could it be a probe, a shard of technology, or even the silent remnant of a civilization that once looked outward to the same stars we see tonight? In the chapters to come, we will move slowly through astronomy, geology, biology, and philosophy, never rushing toward an answer, but pausing instead with images and questions that may linger as you drift into rest. You are listening to Arcane Skies. If you feel drawn to this journey, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Share with us where and when you're joining this story. The night sky has always been a place where the imagination drifts as freely as comets themselves. Long before telescopes, people looked upward and saw in those wandering lights the trails of gods, the omens of change, or the spirits of ancestors passing silently between realms. Today, with instruments far sharper than the naked eye, we still find ourselves caught in the same spell, watching, measuring, and yet never quite able to shake the feeling that the sky's alive with intention. When Three-Eye Atlas entered our field of vision, it was as if a new actor had stepped onto an ancient stage, carrying with it questions older than language. Astronomers first recognized it by its motion. Most comets and asteroids that orbit the Sun follow predictable ellipses, looping in cycles that can be traced back for centuries. But Three-Eye Atlas came in at a speed too great, on a trajectory that could never close back into a circle. This was the first whisper that it was not of our solar system at all, but a traveller from beyond. To picture such a thing is difficult. Imagine a grain of dust leaving the orbit of a distant star, pushed out by the faint breath of gravitational tides, and then crossing the void for millions, perhaps billions of years, until by chance it brushes against our own small system of planets. The very idea stretches the mind. In the vast darkness between stars, there is almost nothing, so little that one could travel for light years and never touch a pebble. For Three-Eye Atlas to appear in our telescopes is therefore like seeing a single drifting leaf float down onto a vast empty ocean. It reminds us not only of the enormity of space, but also of the strange coincidences that allow us to notice anything at all. And yet, once it appeared, the questions multiplied. Astronomers asked, what is its composition? Is it a comet, rich with volatile ices that sublimate into tails when warmed by the sun? Or is it more like an asteroid, a compact stone fragment chipped off from some larger world? Each measurement of its brightness, each attempt to read its colour spectrum, felt like holding a seashell to the ear, listening for an echo of a shore far away. In the quiet of night observatories, scientists traced its arc across the sky, noting how sunlight scattered off its surface. Some reported slight irregularities, as if the object were not behaving entirely as predicted. Perhaps the jets of gas were pushing it in unexpected ways. Or perhaps, though more cautious voices resisted saying so, something else was guiding its path. The imagination takes hold here, lingering on the idea of an object that is not only shaped by natural forces, but designed. Could an alien civilization, long vanished or still alive, have sent such fragments drifting as silent emissaries into the dark? When we ask such questions, we often balance on the fine line between science and story. On one hand, we know from physics that icy fragments do break away, do wander between stars, and sometimes enter new systems. On the other hand, the human heart has always looked at mysterious arrivals with a touch of reverence, as if every uninvited visitor carried a message. If 3i Atlas is only a frozen relic of chance, it still tells us something profound, that matter itself migrates across the galaxy and perhaps even seeds new worlds with the ingredients of life. But if it is more than chance, if there is some design, then it may hint that we are not the only witnesses to the cosmos. Think for a moment of the name Atlas. In mythology, Atlas was the titan condemned to hold up the sky for eternity, his back bent beneath the weight of heaven. How curious that this interstellar traveller should carry the same name, as though it too shoulders a cosmic burden, to remind us of distances, of patience, of forces beyond comprehension. It drifts without urgency, carrying with it no sound, no signal we can yet decipher, only the slow grace of a visitor that has come uninvited and will leave without farewell. And what if we could follow it? Imagine hitching a ride upon that frozen hull, sailing back into the void from which it came. We would leave behind the sun, watching it shrink to a pale star among many. We would enter the silence between systems, where the nearest light is years away and the darkness becomes almost tangible, like a velvet sea pressing against the hull. Somewhere, far ahead, lies the birthplace of this fragment, a region of chaos and creation around another star. Was it a young system flinging away debris like sparks from a fire, or an old one breaking apart, scattering its children into the void? The story of 3i Atlas is therefore not only about what it is, but about where it has been. Each scar on its surface may carry the memory of collisions, of close passages to stars, of long seasons in the coldest dark. If we could read those scars, they might tell us of temperatures never felt on Earth, of forces that stretch beyond our comprehension. Some scientists even suggest that interstellar objects could deliver organic compounds, the basic building blocks of life, from one system to another. If true, then perhaps 3i Atlas is more than a messenger of stone and ice. Perhaps it is a carrier of possibility, a drifting seed in the endless garden of the galaxy. And yet, as we watch it move across the star fields, another thought returns. Could such an object be more deliberate than we allow ourselves to believe? When humans send spacecraft into deep space, like the Voyager probes, we place golden records upon them, etched with sounds and symbols of our world. We know the chances of them being found are vanishingly small, yet still we send them, because the act of sending is itself a form of hope. If we, in our infancy as a species, do this, then what might an older, more advanced civilization have done? Would they, too, cast small emissaries into the dark, hoping one might brush against another star and be noticed? The thought is both humbling and unsettling. To look at 3i Atlas through a telescope is to see nothing more than a point of light, faint against the deep sky. And yet, in that point, the imagination finds a mirror of ourselves. We see our own longing to reach across the void, to be acknowledged, to not be alone. So as you let these ideas drift with you tonight, consider this. If 3i Atlas carries a story, what story might it be telling us? Is it the silent narrative of physics and chance, or the whispered message of minds unseen? Perhaps, as with all things in the night sky, the truth is both smaller and greater than we can yet imagine. And as it fades into the distance, beyond our reach, it leaves us with a question suspended gently in the dark. What if we are already surrounded by the messages of others, and we simply do not yet know how to listen? In the stillness of a desert observatory, far from the lights of cities, the telescope turns its polished glass toward a faint smudge of movement. The air is cool, carrying the scent of stone dust and dry sage. Somewhere, an owl cries once and then falls silent, as if the night itself is listening. Through the eyepiece, 3i Atlas drifts, not hurried, not restless, but steady, an unfamiliar visitor crossing the backdrop of constellations we have known for millennia. It is a reminder that the sky is not fixed, that into its ancient patterns new actors sometimes wander, carrying mysteries no one invited but everyone longs to decode. Scientists describe its path in terms of hyperbolic trajectory. To the lay ear, that phrase may sound mathematical and distant, but picture it this way. Instead of circling the sun like a runner on a track, Atlas is more like a bird swooping across a field, entering from one side, curving around the centre, and then leaving forever. This shape, this hyperbola, tells us it is not bound to us. Gravity will not claim it. It will not stay. The sun will tug at it for a while, bend its course a little, but ultimately release it back into the deep where it came from. There is something profoundly moving about that. Most of the bodies we study, the planets, the moons, the familiar comets, are neighbours. They belong to the same family of orbits, repeating endlessly, predictable and domestic. But an interstellar object is different. It is a wanderer carrying a passport from beyond, a guest who will not settle. And in that brief encounter, we are offered the rare chance to learn not only about the object, but about the galaxy itself. Some astronomers immediately compared Atlas to its predecessors, like Oumuamua, the first confirmed interstellar visitor. Oumuamua was a slender, elongated body, tumbling as it passed, sparking debates about whether its acceleration was purely natural or something stranger. It left behind arguments that remain unresolved, as if the universe enjoys leaving riddles just beyond the edge of certainty. When Atlas appeared, the comparisons began anew. Would it show the same peculiar behaviour? Would it dissolve into fragments, or reveal an ordinary icy tail, or surprise us with something entirely unexpected? Even the act of studying such a visitor carries layers of symbolism. Telescopes collect photons, the faint packets of light that have bounced from Atlas's surface and travelled across space to reach our lenses. Imagine that. Each gleam is a messenger that has touched this alien fragment and then carried its imprint to Earth. To record those photons is to catch whispers from another system, captured in silence, decoded in laboratories glowing with computer screens. It is almost ritualistic, this gathering of light, as if we were priests interpreting signs left by distant gods. Yet we must resist the urge to leap too quickly into conclusions. Nature is endlessly inventive. Gas jets, thermal stress, the uneven melting of ice, all can produce movements that appear unusual to us. But then again, the very act of asking "what if" has always pushed our understanding forward. What if comets brought water to the early Earth, delivering the oceans drop by frozen drop? What if the organic molecules discovered in meteorites are clues that life can be sown like seeds across the galaxy? And now, What if an object like Atlas is not only shaped by chance, but by choice? To hold both ideas, natural and artificial, in the mind at once is not a contradiction. It is a discipline of imagination. Just as philosophers of old would sit by rivers and wonder whether the flow of time itself could be measured, so too do astronomers today gaze at Atlas and wonder whether they are seeing only geology or the faint brushstroke of technology. A probe disguised as a rock might seem fantastical, but when weighed against the vastness of cosmic time, it does not feel impossible. Civilizations could rise and fall across billions of years, leaving behind remnants that drift quietly until chance delivers them to our doorstep. Consider how little we would need to change our perspective to see Atlas differently. From one angle, it is simply a comet, shedding dust, glowing faintly as sunlight warms its skin. From another angle, it becomes a question mark written against the blackboard of space, and the human mind is drawn to questions more than answers. For answers tend to close doors, while questions open them wide, letting in the wind of possibilities. Think of the sensory experience of this discovery. To stand beneath the stars, knowing that above you hangs a fragment from another star, is to feel the thinness of our boundaries. The wind against your cheek may carry the scent of pine, the rumble of a distant highway, the warmth of the earth still breathing heat into the night, and yet, somewhere above, in silence too deep for ears to catch, drifts a body that has travelled for eons. The contrast humbles us. Our lives flicker, our civilizations rise and fall in centuries, but Atlas has been voyaging since before our ancestors learned to shape fire into hearths. And perhaps it carries with it more than dust. Could it hold isotopes unknown to us, elements formed in the forge of stars older than the sun? Could it bear scars of collisions with unseen worlds, hints of planetary systems that collapsed long ago? Every scratch on its surface is a story we cannot yet read, but stories do not require certainty to be meaningful. Even the suspicion of a story, of some secret history embedded in stone, is enough to draw us closer, to widen our gaze, to deepen our sense of belonging to a universe far larger than we can hold. If Atlas is nothing but a comet, then it is still miraculous, for it confirms that the universe is not closed. Material crosses gulfs, systems exchange fragments, and the galaxy breathes with motion and exchange. If Atlas is more than a comet, if it is an artifact or a message, or even an accident of alien engineering, then it changes everything. Either way, its presence tells us we are part of a greater weave, stitched together by chance, by gravity, and perhaps by intention. So tonight, as you let these thoughts soften, imagine 3-Ori Atlas as it arcs across the starfields. It will not stay. Its visit is brief. Yet in that brevity lies its power, to remind us that the universe is not silent, but filled with travellers, some we see, most we miss, all carrying their own quiet truths. And as it fades beyond our reach, you might wonder, how many others have passed unnoticed, whispering through the night sky, leaving us unaware that we are already participants in a dialogue older than Earth itself. When you follow Atlas across the sky on a star chart, its course looks simple. An arc approaching, bending slightly near the sun, and then sweeping outward into the dark once more. Yet beneath that line lies a story written in forces invisible but immense. Gravity is the author here. It is the same pull that binds the moon to the earth, that steadies our oceans into their endless rhythm of tides, and that shapes galaxies into spirals. To imagine Atlas's path is to imagine the hand of gravity itself, sketching with quiet precision on the black canvas of space. Astronomers calculate this trajectory with equations that sound abstract: Newton's laws, Kepler's ellipses, Einstein's curvature of space-time. But the essence is simpler and more poetic. Picture dropping a pebble into a stream. The pebble doesn't move in a straight line. It bends, nudged by currents it cannot resist. Atlas is that pebble, and the sun is the stream. The difference is scale. Instead of water molecules, it is the very fabric of space being tugged, stretched and curved. And instead of a few meters, the distances are measured in millions of kilometers, the timescales in centuries. What stirs the imagination is not only the mechanics, but the improbability of our timing. For Atlas to arrive at this moment in our history, when humans have the instruments to notice it, is like catching sight of a single bird in migration, among billions, at the exact instant it passes overhead. How many such objects slip by unseen, their stories unrecorded, their presence forgotten before it was ever known? The thought is humbling, like realizing that the horizon is full of travellers, but our eyes are too limited to follow more than a few. Some suggest that interstellar objects are not rare at all, that the galaxy might be filled with them, thousands drifting through the solar system at any given time, most too faint to detect. If so, then Atlas is not an exception, but a reminder that we are embedded in a wider traffic of cosmic debris. Each fragment carries the history of another star, another set of planets, another story of creation and destruction. To catch one in our gaze is to glimpse a letter in a language we are only beginning to learn. Still, the possibility lingers. What if some of these travellers are not simply accidents of nature? When Voyager 1 left the solar system, it carried the golden record, etched with greetings, music, and diagrams of our world. That record is now speeding silently toward the stars, a tiny message in a bottle cast into a vast ocean. From our perspective, it is a fragile gesture, a hope that someday, somewhere, someone might find it. But from another perspective, it is proof that civilizations create artifacts destined for interstellar drift. If we have done this in our infancy, who is to say that others, older and wiser, have not done the same? Imagine Atlas as such an artifact. Its surface, rough and dark, may conceal a geometry not yet visible, like carvings worn smooth by eons. Its faint emissions of gas, which we interpret as sublimating ice, could be something else entirely. A form of release, a controlled venting, or a mechanism we cannot yet recognize. We study it with the tools we know, but the unknown may lie just beyond our categories. History is full of moments where observers misunderstood what they saw because their framework was not yet wide enough. Sailors once thought comets were omens. Perhaps in some distant future, our descendants will look back and smile at how narrowly we described Atlas. And yet there is beauty even in not knowing. To stand on the threshold of possibility, to hold in the mind both the natural and the artificial, is a kind of meditation. It slows us, draws us into silence. The object becomes a mirror. If we ask whether it is alien, we are also asking what it means to be human, to reach, to send, to wander. Our questions about Atlas are in truth questions about ourselves. Think also of the silence in which Atlas moves. Space is not only dark but soundless, a realm where collisions happen without noise, where explosions bloom without echo. The silence is complete, and into it drifts Atlas, a body that has travelled for millions of years without announcing itself. On Earth, everything makes sound, wind through leaves, rivers carving stone, our own voices filling rooms. Against that backdrop, Atlas is almost otherworldly in its quietness, and yet, by catching light, it speaks. Its language is reflection, brightness, motion. Our telescopes act as translators, converting that faint shimmer into data, then into stories. In this sense, perhaps Atlas is already speaking to us, though we do not yet know the grammar. Consider the way it bends light. Each photon that leaves the sun and touches Atlas carries away a memory, a trace of its encounter. By the time that photon reaches our telescope, it has travelled more than 100 million kilometres, carrying in its vibration the subtle fingerprint of what it touched. When we analyse the spectrum, breaking light into bands of colour, we are reading that fingerprint. It may show the presence of carbon, of oxygen, of complex molecules. Some of those molecules, if found, would be the same ones woven into our own bodies. In that sense, Atlas could be less alien than we imagine. Another participant in the same chemical symphony that binds the galaxy together. But then again, what if it is more? What if the pattern of molecules is not random, but arranged? What if its shape, its spin, its irregularities are signals we do not yet recognize? We might be like ants crawling across a cathedral, seeing only stone and dust, never realizing the design towering above. To imagine Atlas in this way is not to claim it must be true, but to acknowledge that our perspective is limited, our scale small. Curiosity is the bridge we build across that gap. In the end, Atlas is both ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary because it obeys gravity, reflects sunlight, and follows the same physics as everything else. Extraordinary because its origin is elsewhere, because its presence forces us to confront the vastness beyond our reach. Whether it is stone or artifact, it has already altered us by making us wonder. And wonder too is a force, one that shapes civilizations, directs telescopes, inspires voyages. So tonight, as you breathe slowly, as the rhythm of your body sinks into rest, picture Atlas continuing its journey. No eye can follow it forever. Soon it will vanish beyond even the most powerful instruments. But in your imagination, it can remain, a faint spark gliding through the dark, a question without an answer, a visitor that leaves behind only silence. And as you drift towards sleep, you might ask yourself, if Atlas is not alone, how many more travellers are out there, watching us even as we struggle to see them? In the early morning hours, when observatories trade the bright glare of the sun for the patient glow of stars, data on Atlas begins to accumulate. Long sequences of numbers, streams of images, graphs that flicker with faint changes, all of it comes together like pieces of a puzzle whose picture is still hidden. For most of us, these charts might look like nothing more than abstract lines, but to astronomers, they are voices from across the void, whispers carried by photons that have brushed against the traveller's skin. When scientists analyse such data, they look for signatures, patterns in light that reveal what the object is made of. A dip in one part of the spectrum may point to carbon, another to water ice, another still to silicate minerals, like those in our own rocks. It is a delicate art, one that requires both precision and imagination. For every measurement, there are uncertainties, margins of error, possibilities that overlap. But in those blurred spaces, questions bloom. What if Atlas carries compounds we do not expect? What if its chemistry is not only natural, but curated? The concept of panspermia, life seeded across worlds by drifting comets and asteroids, returns here like a half-remembered dream. We know from meteorites that organic molecules, the building blocks of proteins and DNA, exist in the cold darkness of space. Amino acids have been found embedded in stones that once fell through our skies. If such molecules can form in the void, then perhaps they can also travel. carried by objects like Atlas. And if they travel, then every interstellar visitor is more than a rock. It is a potential courier of life, a seed cast into the garden of stars. Of course, the leap from molecules to civilizations is vast. A frozen amino acid is not the same as a message carved by intelligence. Yet the mind does not stop at one possibility. It wonders, could Atlas be both a carrier of nature's chemistry and hidden deeper, a sign of design? Imagine a civilization older than ours, aware of the fragility of its own world. Perhaps facing extinction, it chose to send pieces of itself into space, not spaceships in the sense we imagine, but smaller, quieter fragments disguised as comets, each carrying encoded traces of memory, history, or technology. Over time, most would vanish, but a few might endure, waiting to be discovered by others. This idea echoes myths we tell ourselves. Think of the stories of seeds hidden after a flood, or knowledge buried in secret vaults to outlast disaster. Across cultures, people have always imagined that wisdom might be preserved in objects, carried forward through cataclysm. What if Atlas is such a vault, not of human design but of something beyond us? The possibility is slim, but the very act of asking brings a new tenderness to the way we observe it. Yet even without intelligence behind it, Atlas is still a marvel. Its existence proves that material from distant stars can reach us. Picture it, a piece of matter torn from another system, perhaps in a collision, perhaps through gravitational scattering, flung into the void and left to wander for millions of years. Along the way, it may have passed near other stars, grazed the edges of other worlds, accumulated scars from cosmic dust and radiation. Each moment of its journey is etched invisibly into its structure, a diary written in minerals and ices. To study it, even imperfectly, is to read a few words from that diary, to glimpse a history that stretches far beyond our own. But the imagination lingers on another detail, the way Atlas reflects sunlight. To our instruments, that reflection looks faint, reddish, irregular. To the human mind, however, reflection is a metaphor. It is as though the object itself is reflecting our questions back at us. What do we see when we look at it? A comet, a fragment, a messenger, a probe. Each possibility reveals something about our own desire to make sense of the unknown. Astronomers argue in papers, in conferences, in late-night emails lit by the blue glow of screens. Some insist on caution, on natural explanations. Others allow room for speculation, noting oddities that resist easy categorization. The debates themselves are part of the process, a ritual as old as science, gathering around a mystery, weighing evidence, balancing imagination against restraint. And beneath it all lies the quiet recognition that our instruments are limited, that we may never know the full truth before Atlas vanishes beyond reach. Think of the Voyager spacecraft again, now drifting in interstellar space. To us, they are emissaries of humanity, but to another species, should they ever be found, they might appear as little more than strange, inert fragments. Would those beings wonder whether the voyages were natural or artificial? Would they puzzle over their golden records or dismiss them as odd mineral formations? In this mirror, we see ourselves, creatures staring at Atlas, uncertain whether it is message or stone, artifact or accident. And perhaps that uncertainty is the point. The cosmos rarely offers certainty. It offers awe, and awe is enough. To sit under the stars, knowing that one of them hides a visitor from another world, is to feel the thinness of our boundaries, the openness of the universe. It is to realize that even in silence the cosmos is speaking, through trajectories, through spectra, through the quiet arrival of a body from beyond. So let yourself imagine, gently, Atlas moving through the night, gliding past the sun, leaving us behind. Perhaps it is a seed, perhaps a relic, perhaps nothing more than a stone on a cosmic breeze. But whatever it is, it has already left an imprint. Not on the Earth's surface, but on our minds. It has reminded us that we are part of a web of exchanges larger than any one world. And as it continues outward, slipping into darkness, one question remains like an ember in the quiet. What if we too are seeds drifting, waiting to be discovered by eyes not yet imagined? Far above the Earth, satellites orbit quietly, their instruments fixed on the heavens. They register not only the motion of planets and stars, but also the faint streaks of interlopers like Atlas. From that vantage, free of the atmosphere's distortion, the cosmos looks sharper, steadier, as though the sky itself has been polished clear. And yet, even here, where technology has given us unprecedented vision, Atlas remains elusive. It does not reveal itself easily. It asks to be traced with patience, to be understood in fragments rather than in full. One of the most puzzling aspects of interstellar visitors is their shape. With asteroids and comets born in our solar system, we are accustomed to certain forms. Irregular lumps, rough boulders, sometimes crowned with a halo of dust. Oumuamua, the first interstellar traveller we confirmed, broke those expectations. Its elongated, cigar-like body did not fit the patterns we knew. Some saw a shard of rock, fractured in some distant catastrophe. Others whispered of sails and probes, engineered rather than born. With Atlas, too, shape is both a question and an enigma. Observations hint at irregularity, at fragmentation, at instability, as though it cannot quite hold itself together. What does it mean for an object to fragment as it nears the sun? In scientific terms, it could be a matter of heat. Interstellar ices, long preserved in the cold, suddenly warm, expand and shatter. Tiny vents release gas, spinning the body, pulling it apart. In metaphorical terms, it is as if a traveller carries secrets too fragile for daylight, and under the sun's gaze they begin to unravel. The fragments trail behind like memories dissolving, pieces of a story too vast to keep whole. Yet fragmentation does not make Atlas less mysterious. It makes it more so, for each shard carries with it a different angle, a different face of its hidden history. To study the pieces is to glimpse not just one object, but many, each a splinter of another star's tale. And if by chance any of those pieces fall inward, burning through our skies as meteors, they might even deliver material to our Earth. In such a case, the distance between us and the alien would shrink from millions of kilometers to the palm of a hand. Scientists sometimes speak of isotopes, variants of the same element with different weights. By analysing isotopes, they can tell whether a rock formed in our solar system or elsewhere. If someday we could hold a fragment of Atlas, measure its isotopes, we might confirm beyond doubt its alien origin. Such confirmation would not mean it is artificial, but it would root our imagination firmly. Here, in our laboratories, lies a stone that began beneath another sun. What would it feel like to touch such a fragment? Would it feel different beneath the fingers, colder, denser, more ancient? Or would it feel deceptively ordinary, like any other pebble, its extraordinariness hidden not in its texture, but in its story? History reminds us that many great discoveries first appeared ordinary. A rock pulled from the ground turns out to carry a fossil. A line scratched on clay becomes the first writing. A grain of sand under a microscope reveals a universe of complexity. Perhaps Atlas is another such ordinary, extraordinary object, waiting for us to look with the right lens. But the thought lingers. If Atlas were designed, how would we know? What markers would distinguish an alien artifact from a natural stone? Would there be patterns etched too faint for us to see, geometries that only appear when viewed from the right angle? Would there be a hidden rhythm in its spin, a message encoded in rotation? Or would design itself be so alien that we might mistake it for randomness? To imagine this is not to drift into fantasy, but to expand the boundaries of our humility. We must admit, we might not yet have the language to recognize another intelligence's work. As night turns toward dawn, the stars begin to fade, but Atlas continues on its course, indifferent to our wonder. It does not slow, does not answer, does not announce. Its silence is not refusal, it is simply its nature, and perhaps silence is its message. In silence we are invited to listen more deeply, not for words, but for patterns, for relationships, for meaning beyond noise. In many traditions, silence is sacred. Monks sit in quiet halls, sages retreat into caves, seekers walk into deserts, where only the wind speaks. They do this because in silence, questions sharpen. To watch Atlas glide wordlessly across the void is to share in that silence, to allow our own thoughts to echo more clearly. Science gives us numbers, but awe gives us resonance. So as you lie back and let your breathing settle, picture Atlas not as an answer, but as a pause, a comma in the sentence of the galaxy. It passes, it fragments, it leaves behind trails of dust and questions. And in its passing, it asks of us only this: what will you choose to see, a stone or a story? Or if you stand beneath a truly dark sky, far from the reach of artificial lights, the Milky Way stretches above you like a river of frozen breath. Each star glimmers faintly, yet together they form a luminous band that arches across the horizon. To remember that Atlas comes from somewhere within that band, or perhaps beyond it, is to feel the dizzying truth that we are not at the centre of things, but only one shore along a vast cosmic waterway. Atlas is a droplet set adrift from another shore, now brushing past ours for the briefest of moments. Astronomers try to trace its origin, calculating backwards through space and time. They run simulations, rolling the clock in reverse, letting gravity's equations wind the traveller's path back toward the unknown. But here the trail grows faint. With each calculation, uncertainty multiplies. The galaxy is restless. Stars orbit the galactic centre at different speeds. Systems tug on one another invisibly, and the interstellar medium, clouds of gas and dust, shifts like weather across millions of years. Atlas's birth star may have moved far from the region it once inhabited. Like a letter torn from its envelope, the fragment no longer points clearly to its source. And yet hints remain. Its velocity is unusual, faster than most interstellar debris we expect. Some suggest it may have been ejected from a dense dynamic system, perhaps a cluster of young stars where gravitational encounters are fierce. Others wonder if it could be the shard of a planet shattered long ago, flung outward by violence we can barely imagine. Whatever its origin, it carries within it a history written in silence, a timeline older than our species, older even than the continents we stand upon. The human mind seeks analogies to grasp such vastness. We imagine messages in bottles cast into the sea. We imagine seeds caught by the wind, travelling to distant fields. Atlas is both, a fragment adrift, a seed born on invisible currents, its destination unknown. And the question arises, is our solar system the field where it lands, or only a place it drifts past on the way to somewhere else? In the laboratories of Earth, scientists examine not only light from Atlas, but also the physics of such visitors in general. They ask, how many interstellar objects should exist? Estimates vary, but some models suggest trillions, scattered across the galaxy like dust motes caught in a shaft of light. If that is true, then encounters are inevitable. We may be entering an era where the study of interstellar wanderers becomes a discipline of its own. A new astronomy of drifters, a science of messages that may or may not have senders. And here again, imagination presses closer. What if such wanderers are not only debris, but scouts? The idea recalls our own probes, the voyagers and pioneers, each carrying the imprint of Earth. To another civilization, they would appear as small, cold, silent machines, drifting much as Atlas does. An alien astronomer might debate whether they were natural or artificial, their golden plaques perhaps mistaken for mineral veins, their radio silence interpreted as the quiet of stone. In this mirror, we see ourselves reflected in Atlas, both sender and receiver, both question and questioner. But perhaps the more profound message lies not in the possibility of design, but in the fact of exchange. Matter travels between stars, rocks, ice, dust, all move across gulfs so vast they defy imagination. If material can move, then so too can life's precursors. And if life's precursors can move, then perhaps life itself is not a local accident, but a galactic tendency. In this view, Atlas is not an intruder, but a participant in a long, slow sharing of ingredients, a cosmic marketplace where every system contributes to the recipe of existence. There is a quiet comfort in that thought. It suggests that we are not isolated, that the atoms in our bodies may have once been carried by such travellers, that our very breath contains echoes of journeys like Atlas's. When you inhale, the oxygen entering your lungs may have been forged in a star billions of years ago, scattered by supernova, reassembled in water, taken up by life, and now released again. In this sense, every breath is interstellar. Atlas only makes the truth visible, reminding us of the journeys hidden within ourselves. Still we return to the mystery. If Atlas is only natural, it is a wonder. If it is artificial, it is a revelation. If it is both, a natural fragment, later altered or used by intelligence, then it is something stranger still, a hybrid of accident and intention. The cosmos is not bound to our categories. It may well create things that blur them. To ponder this is to let go of certainty, to drift with Atlas itself, carried by currents we cannot control. Imagine, for a moment, that we could follow it outward. We would pass the orbit of Neptune, where sunlight fades into a dim glow. Beyond lies the Kuiper Belt, a realm of icy bodies circling like a forgotten necklace. Beyond that, the Oort cloud, a shell of comets surrounding the sun at distances so vast they are almost myth. Atlas will pass them all, leaving our system behind, slipping once more into the true dark between stars. There it will travel for millions of years, untouched, unseen, silent, unless, of course, it meets another system, another watcher, another imagination waiting to be stirred. And so the question lingers, soft but insistent. Are we the only ones who notice, or are there others elsewhere, watching their own skies, wondering about objects that come to them from beyond? If Atlas is a messenger, perhaps it is not only for us. Perhaps every system it passes is invited into the same meditation, the same moment of awe. In that way, Atlas is a bridge, not between two civilizations, but between all who dare to wonder at the silence of space. As you close your eyes and let the rhythm of your breath deepen, picture that silent arc, a fragment from another star gliding through our sky, leaving behind no sound but a question. And that question, as soft as starlight, is this: If the universe is constantly sending us travelers, what new story might arrive tomorrow, unnoticed until it drifts close enough for us to see? When dawn breaks, telescopes close their eyes, domes slide shut, and observatories fall into silence. Yet the data they gathered through the night continues its quiet journey across networks and servers, carried into the hands of those who will analyze it. Somewhere in those numbers is Atlas, its light, its curve, its whispered presence recorded in rows and columns. To the untrained eye it may look like noise, but within the noise is a pattern, and within the pattern, perhaps, a story. Astronomers are not the only ones who watch. Philosophers, too, turn their attention toward Atlas, though their instruments are different. Where scientists measure brightness, philosophers measure meaning. What does it signify for a fragment from another star to cross our skies? Does it remind us of our smallness, or does it affirm our belonging to a wider cosmos? Does it awaken in us the idea that we are participants in a drama that stretches beyond Earth, beyond the sun, beyond time as we know it? In ancient Greece, philosophers spoke of the cosmos not only as space, but as order, as beauty, as harmony. They imagined a universe alive with music, a harmony of the spheres where planets sang their orbits in tones too subtle for the ear. Atlas, drifting silently through that imagined harmony, becomes part of the music. Its arc, its speed, its reflection of light. These are notes in a composition so vast that we can hear only fragments. Perhaps what we call wonder is nothing more than the recognition of music we do not yet know how to play. But philosophy does not end at metaphor. It raises deeper questions about existence itself. If Atlas is alien, whether natural or artificial, what does that mean for us? If it is natural, then life may not be a singular miracle, but part of a tapestry woven across countless stars. If it is artificial, then intelligence has already crossed distances we can hardly conceive, and we are not the first to wonder, nor the last. In both cases, the universe becomes larger, not smaller. In both cases, the boundary between here and there dissolves a little more. There is also the question of time. Atlas may have travelled for millions of years before reaching us. In that time, civilizations could have risen and fallen, stars could have flared and dimmed, galaxies could have collided. To look at Atlas is to look not only across space, but across time. It carries with it an age older than our own species, older than our myths, older even than the first forests that spread across Earth. It is a reminder that we are brief, but also that we are participants in something enduring. Think of how we measure time on Earth, by the turning of seasons, by the ticking of clocks, by the rhythm of breath. These are short measures, human measures. Atlas moves by another measure altogether. Its clock is the galaxy itself, its rhythm the sweep of orbits across millions of years. To align our thoughts with that rhythm is to step outside ourselves, to glimpse what eternity might feel like. And yet, even eternity is not immune to fragility. Atlas fragments under the heat of the sun, its structure crumbling, its pieces scattering like dust in the wind. What lesson lies there? Perhaps that even travellers who endure for eons must one day unravel. Perhaps that impermanence is not only ours, but belongs also to the stars, the comets, the galaxies themselves. The universe endures, but its parts are always changing, always dissolving, always reforming. There is comfort in this. Our own lives, fleeting as they are, mirror the same pattern. We are fragments too, atoms assembled for a while, then released, then gathered again. The same hydrogen in your body may once have glowed in the heart of a star. The same carbon may have belonged to forests long vanished. In this sense, you are already interstellar, already part of the journey Atlas makes. Somewhere a child might look up at the night sky and hear this story. They may not know the word hyperbolic, nor the details of spectroscopy, but they may understand wonder. They may imagine Atlas as a ship, or a seed, or a message. They may carry that question with them into adulthood, into science, into art. In this way, Atlas plants seeds not only in the solar system, but in our imaginations. Each question it sparks is another root, another branch in the forest of thought. And what of civilizations beyond? If Atlas is artificial, perhaps it was never meant for us. Perhaps it was launched ages ago, with no knowledge of Earth at all. Perhaps it has passed countless systems, without pause, countless observers without notice, and yet it reached us now, at a moment when our instruments are just sharp enough to see, when our minds are just restless enough to wonder. What does that coincidence mean? Is it pure chance, or is it the inevitable outcome of a universe dense with stories waiting for listeners? As night returns and telescopes awaken once more, Atlas continues its glide. The Earth spins beneath it, continents slipping into shadow and then into light. People rise and sleep, cities hum, oceans breathe, and all the while the interstellar traveller drifts, indifferent and yet deeply connected to the questions it stirs. So as you listen in this quiet hour, let yourself rest in the rhythm of these thoughts. You do not need to decide whether Atlas is alien or natural, artifact or fragment. You need only to feel the presence of a question carried gently across the dark. And that question, like a lullaby, is simple. If the sky can deliver strangers to our doorstep, what strangers might we one day send into the skies of others? If we close our eyes and try to imagine the path of Atlas backward through time, the mind begins to drift into spaces that cannot be drawn on a simple map. Astronomers use equations, simulations, and the quiet patience of computers to trace its steps, letting gravity pull the story in reverse, but the truth is slippery. The galaxy is not a fixed stage. It is a restless ocean where every star sails its own course, circling the galactic centre at different speeds, tugging on one another with invisible currents. To ask where Atlas came from is to ask where a wave began in the sea. Possible to guess, impossible to pinpoint. And yet even uncertainty has its beauty. By studying its velocity, its angle, its subtle brightness, scientists can narrow the possibilities. Some suggest Atlas was born in the cradle of a dense star cluster, a nursery where suns are born in crowds. In such places, gravitational encounters are violent, like children bumping shoulders in a crowded square, scattering toys in all directions. Perhaps Atlas was one of those toys, flung outward, carrying within it the dust of its parent star. Others imagine a different origin, a shattered planet, torn apart by collision, its fragments cast into the dark like embers from a fire. If so, Atlas is not merely a stone, but a grave marker, a shard of a world that once was. Time deepens the strangeness. Consider that Atlas may have been travelling for millions of years before our species even existed. While it crossed the gulfs between stars, the Earth itself was transforming. Forests rose, oceans shifted, ice ages advanced and retreated. Civilizations appeared, built temples, carved myths, and vanished again. Through it all, Atlas moved silently, without pause, without witness, carrying its unknown history. It is older than our languages, older than our gods, older even than the mountains worn smooth by rain. To watch it now is to glimpse a relic from before memory itself. The scale is difficult to hold in the mind. On Earth, we measure time by days, by seasons, by the passing of generations. A century feels long, 1,000 years nearly unimaginable. But Atlas is a creature of cosmic time. 1,000,000 years is a footstep, 100,000,000 an afternoon. To think in such scales is to let go of the human clock and enter a slower rhythm, one where patience is measured not in years but in eternities. And yet, even eternal travellers leave traces. On its surface, Atlas may carry scars invisible to us, tiny craters from collisions with dust grains, chemical layers altered by cosmic rays, patterns left by the cold of interstellar space. Each mark is a page in a diary, written not in words but in minerals and isotopes. If we could read those pages, what would they tell us? Would they whisper of close passages near distant suns, where heat briefly woke the ice before freezing it again? Would they reveal hints of chemistry unfamiliar to us, elements forged in stellar furnaces older than our own sun? The search for origins also leads us inward. Why do we care so much where Atlas came from? Perhaps because origins are mirrors of meaning. To know the source of a river is to understand its flow. To know the source of a story is to understand its voice. If Atlas is a natural fragment, then its origin is the violence and creativity of the cosmos itself. If it is artificial, then its origin is intention, the decision of some intelligence somewhere to send it into the dark. And if we never know, perhaps that too is a lesson, that some mysteries are meant not to be solved, but to be lived with, like the presence of stars. Think of myths about lost homelands, Atlantis sinking beneath the sea, Eden lost to exile, the ancestral lands carried only in memory. Atlas may be such a homeland in stone, the last surviving echo of a system long gone. A child of a vanished world, drifting among strangers, carrying silence as its inheritance. There is something hauntingly human in that image, as though the cosmos itself shares in the longing for continuity, the ache of remembering what cannot be restored. Astronomers sometimes try to name candidate stars, nearby systems that Atlas might once have known. But stars wander too, their positions shifting across the millennia, their motions subtle but relentless. The past sky is not the present one. Even if we point to a star and say, perhaps there, we know it is only a gesture, a finger pointing into fog. And yet, that gesture matters. It ties us to the larger map, reminding us that every star is connected, that every fragment has a history, even if we cannot trace it fully. Perhaps the true origin of Atlas is not a single star or event, but the galaxy itself. Just as every human carries the imprint of generations, so too does every interstellar traveller carry the imprint of countless processes. Stellar birth, stellar death, collisions, scatterings, the breathing of matter across billions of years. In this way, Atlas belongs not to one system, but to the Milky Way entire. It is both wanderer and citizen, both orphan and heir. And if we allow ourselves a softer thought, what if Atlas is more than fragment, more than stone? What if its journey was chosen, not accidental? Then its origin is not only a place, but a decision. Somewhere, sometime, a mind may have said, let us send this outward. Let it drift, let it wander, let it carry us across ages. That decision, if real, would mean that Atlas is not only older than us, but wiser too, a testament to a will that looked beyond its own world. Tonight, as you breathe and settle into stillness, picture Atlas again, drifting in slow arcs across our sky. Behind it trails not only dust, but ages. It carries with it the memory of places we will never see, times we cannot imagine, origins we may never know. And perhaps that is enough, that its passing reminds us that we too have origins older than we realise. that our atoms have travelled as far as Atlas has, that we are not separate from the story of the stars but part of it. And so the question lingers in the dark, gentle and unhurried. If every fragment has an origin, what origin lies within us? The galaxy is not silent stone, fixed and eternal. It breathes, it exchanges. Stars are born in clouds of dust, flare with brilliance, and eventually return their matter to the dark, scattering seeds that drift outward into new beginnings. Atlas is part of that breath, a particle carried on the inhale and exhale of the Milky Way itself. To imagine this is to see the galaxy not as a backdrop, but as a living process, a vast circulation where nothing truly stands still. On Earth, rivers connect mountains to oceans, carrying soil, silt and nutrients from one place to another. In the same way, interstellar objects connect stars, moving dust, ice and rock across gulfs of space. This exchange is slower than rivers, measured not in days or centuries but in millions of years, yet the principle is the same. Material is never static, it wanders. Atlas is a reminder that our solar system is not an isolated island, but a node in a great network, receiving and giving matter to the wider galaxy. The implications reach deeper than geology. If matter travels, then so do the ingredients of life. Comets within our own system have been found to contain amino acids, organic compounds, even simple sugars. When such bodies strike young planets, they deliver these building blocks like packets of possibility scattered across the cosmos. If Atlas carries such compounds, it is not just a stone from another system, it is a courier, part of a cosmic postal service that has been running for billions of years. Scientists call this idea panspermia. It does not claim that complex life rides on comets, only that the seeds, the precursors, the molecules might. Picture spores carried by the wind, drifting across valleys until they land in soil, where conditions allow them to grow. The galaxy itself may be doing something similar, scattering molecular spores across the void, waiting for worlds like Earth to receive them. In this sense, every interstellar object is a gardener's hand sowing possibility. If this is true, then life on Earth is not entirely earthly. The atoms that built us may have been forged elsewhere, delivered by countless travellers before Atlas. To consider this is to feel a kind of kinship, not only with the stars, but with the wanderers that pass between them. Perhaps we are the descendants, not only of this planet, but of the galaxy entire, children of a lineage written in drifting stones. And yet the idea of exchange invites another question. Is it one way or two way? We receive, yes, but we also send. Each time a comet or asteroid is ejected from our solar system by a gravitational slingshot around Jupiter or Saturn, it begins its own long drift outward. Some of those ejected bodies may travel for millions of years before brushing past another star. In this way, Earth too contributes to the galactic exchange. Somewhere, far in the future, another civilization may point telescopes at a faint traveller and wonder, as we do, what if this object is alien? What if it carries not only molecules, but meaning? Voyager and Pioneer remind us that we have already joined this exchange deliberately. Though tiny and fragile, they are emissaries of Earth, carrying plaques and records meant to tell our story. Their journeys echo the natural journeys of objects, like Atlas, but with a difference in tension. And here lies the bridge between science and speculation. If we, so young a species, already choose to send our story outward, then surely others might have done the same. Atlas could be such a gesture, a deliberate contribution to the galactic conversation. But even if Atlas is not artificial, its role is still profound. It reminds us that isolation is an illusion. No system is closed. No world is untouched. The dust of one star becomes the soil of another. The fragments of shattered planets drift on to seed new beginnings. To see Atlas is to see the threads of a larger tapestry, woven not in years or centuries, but across eons. Not in local landscapes, but across the entire spiral of the Milky Way. There is a humility in recognizing this. We often think of ourselves as separate, distinct, bound to one planet. But the truth is that we are participants in a dance far older and wider. Our DNA may contain echoes of cosmic journeys, our chemistry a record of galactic mingling. We are not only Earthlings, we are Milky Way beings, born of exchanges we will never fully trace. Imagine for a moment the countless objects, like Atlas drifting unseen, each one a capsule, a fragment, a spark. Some may wander forever in darkness. Some may be captured by distant stars, becoming comets in new skies. Some may fall into oceans, igniting the slow fire of biology. Each path is different, each outcome unknown, but all share the same origin, movement. The galaxy is restless, and we are part of that restlessness. The exchange is not only physical, but symbolic. By observing Atlas, by asking questions about it, we exchange ignorance for wonder, silence for curiosity. It offers us not only data, but perspective. When we think of matter flowing between stars, we begin to see ourselves differently, not as the sole stage of life, but as one participant in a conversation of matter, energy, and time. So tonight, as you let your body sink into stillness, imagine that larger circulation. Stars breathing dust into the void, dust forming new stars, fragments wandering, colliding, delivering. Atlas is only one example, one visitor among countless others, but its presence is enough to remind us that the galaxy is alive with exchange. And the question it leaves with us is gentle but deep. If the cosmos is always sharing, what part of ourselves are we already giving back to the stars? When we look at Atlas, what we truly see is not only a fragment from another star, but also a reflection of our own longing. The faint point of light in the telescope is both a visitor and a mirror, reminding us of what we have already tried to do. Send pieces of ourselves into the dark, hoping someone, somewhere, might notice. In this sense, Atlas is less a stranger than a twin, echoing the gestures humanity has already made. Consider Voyager 1, launched in 1977. It carries a golden record, etched with sounds of Earth, greetings in many languages, the laughter of children, the rustle of leaves, the murmur of waves. On it is music, from Bach to Chuck Berry, fragments of culture pressed into metal, riding outward forever. For us, that record is more than a curiosity. It is a statement. We were here, we wondered, we reached outward. And yet to another intelligence, if Voyager were ever found, it might look only like a small lump of alloy, silent and still, not so different from Atlas. Would they recognize it as artifact or dismiss it as natural? The question circles back upon us. When we gaze at Atlas, do we recognize what it is, or do we miss its message entirely? This uncertainty is humbling. It reminds us that recognition is not guaranteed. Intelligence is not only a matter of sending signals, but of perceiving them. Two civilizations might brush against one another and never realize it, like ships passing in fog, each with lights too dim for the other to see. Atlas could be such a passing, an unnoticed emissary, a voice in a language we cannot yet hear. And yet, even if we cannot hear, we imagine. Our minds are restless, always searching for meaning. The very act of asking, What if Atlas is alien, is a form of reflection? It shows us our hunger for connection, our unwillingness to believe that we are alone in a silent cosmos. To project intention onto Atlas is not naive, it is deeply human. It is the same impulse that leads us to draw faces in clouds, to see constellations in scattered stars, to hear music in the hum of wind. We find patterns because we need them. They anchor us in a universe that might otherwise feel indifferent. But what if Atlas is patterned? What if its spin, its fragmentation, its faint emission of dust are not entirely random? We do not know, and perhaps we never will. Yet our own behaviour offers a clue. When we build, when we send, we leave behind traces of our design, even if unintended. The voyagers were not meant to look beautiful from afar, but they do bear the unmistakable stamp of human making. Atlas may bear the stamp of something too, whether of physics alone or of a hand beyond. In thinking this way, we also confront the question of legacy. What will we leave behind, thousands or millions of years from now? Our monuments may crumble, our cities fade, our languages vanish, but our probes will continue to drift, silent survivors of civilizations that may be gone. To another species, those probes might be all that remains of us, much as Atlas may be all that remains of its origin. There is poignancy in that thought, a reminder that survival is not always about continuity, but about fragments. Fragments, however, can be powerful. A shard of pottery tells us of ancient hands, a fossil reveals a world of vanished life, a scrap of text preserves entire philosophies. Atlas, too, is a fragment, carrying with it the weight of mystery. By noticing it, by naming it, we have given it meaning in our story. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps the purpose of such fragments is not to deliver a clear message, but to invite imagination, to widen the scope of what we consider possible. Think of a mirror in a dim room. You see not only your face, but the faint reflection of the room around you, distorted, incomplete. Atlas is such a mirror. In it we glimpse not only the possibility of others, but the contours of ourselves, our hopes, our fears, our dreams of connection. To ask whether it is alien is to ask what it means to be human, what it means to send, to receive, to listen in the dark. The night sky is full of such mirrors. Each star we see is a reminder that we're not central, not alone. But an interstellar traveller like Atlas sharpens the reminder. It shows us motion, exchange, dialogue. It whispers that the universe is not only vast, but shared. And in that whisper, we hear ourselves, our own desire to belong, our own yearning for a larger family of minds. So as you rest now, picture Atlas again. It drifts, a quiet light against the velvet black. It may be only stone. It may be more. But in either case, it reflects us. It reflects our hunger to know, our courage to wonder, our fragile but persistent hope that in this immense silence we are not entirely alone. And the question it leaves, gentle as starlight, is this: when we look outward, are we searching for others, or are we searching for ourselves? Every culture tells stories of visitors. Sometimes they arrive from distant lands, sometimes from hidden realms beneath the earth, sometimes from the heavens above. They appear at thresholds, at dawns and dusks, in moments when the ordinary world thins and something other slips through. Atlas, too, is such a visitor, not from myth, but from astronomy, yet carrying the same weight of presence, an unexpected guest who comes without invitation, stays only briefly, and leaves behind questions. Philosophers often ask what it means to encounter the other. The word other can mean a stranger, a traveller, even another self. To meet the other is to be reminded that the world is larger than the circle we draw around ourselves. Atlas is one such reminder, written not in human language but in the slow arc of a hyperbolic orbit. It tells us your solar system is not a closed room. The doors are open and guests may enter. In human life, a guest is both gift and challenge. A guest disrupts routine, but also expands perspective. A guest may bring news, stories, or simply presence. We prepare places for guests, we imagine their intentions, we wonder what they think of us. With Atlas, the same questions arise, though in cosmic form. What does it mean to receive a guest from another star? What posture should we adopt? Fear, curiosity, humility? Philosophy does not answer such questions with certainty. It lingers in the asking. For the Greeks, hospitality was sacred, overseen by the gods. To welcome a stranger was to welcome possibility itself. What if the same principle applies to the cosmos? What if to notice Atlas, to pay attention, is already a form of hospitality, a way of saying, we are here, we see you, you matter to us? Even if Atlas never notices in return, the gesture transforms us. We become not only receivers of data, but hosts of wonder. There is also the deeper question of recognition. How do we know when we have encountered the other? If Atlas is natural, is it still an encounter? Some might say yes, for it reminds us of our connectedness. Others might insist that only if Atlas is artificial can it truly be called a visitor in the sense of agency. Yet perhaps the distinction is less important than we think. To meet something beyond our usual horizon, whether stone or artifact, is to encounter strangeness, and strangeness is enough to shift perspective. Phenomenologists, those who study the nature of experience, might remind us that the meaning of an encounter lies not only in the object, but in the perception. Atlas exists whether or not we notice it, but its meaning as visitor only emerges when we look up, measure, wonder. In this sense, we are co-authors of the encounter. Without our gaze, Atlas would pass in silence. With our gaze, it becomes a story, a mirror, a guest. And what of fear? History shows that visitors often provoke anxiety. A new ship on the horizon could bring trade or invasion. A traveller could be a friend or a threat. When Oumuamua was first detected, some voices immediately asked whether it might be a probe, a scout, even a harbinger. Such fears are natural, for to meet the unknown is to confront our own vulnerability. Yet fear is not the only response. Wonder, curiosity, reverence, all are equally available. Perhaps the challenge of encounters is to choose which posture we cultivate. Atlas also touches on the philosophy of time. A visitor implies arrival, presence, and departure. It reminds us that nothing lasts. Guests come, and then they go. Atlas too will leave, vanishing into the dark. We cannot hold it, cannot keep it, can only mark its passing. This fleetingness is part of its power. Like a comet in ancient skies, it arrives to remind us of impermanence, of cycles larger than ourselves. Perhaps that is why such visitors have always stirred philosophy. They dramatize the truth that all things are temporary, yet all things leave traces. There is another thought, softer, but no less profound. What if we too are visitors? To the galaxy at large, humanity is young, temporary, passing. Our civilizations rise and fall. Our species may endure or fade. In the long timeline of the universe, we are a brief guest upon the Earth, no less fragile than Atlas in the sun's heat. To see ourselves as guests might change how we live, with humility, with gratitude, with awareness that our time is precious. And yet guests leave gifts. Atlas's gift is not material. We will not mine it, will not catch it, but symbolic. It gives us questions, expands our imagination, links us to a broader web. The fact that it exists, that we noticed it, is enough to alter our sense of the possible. In return, our gift is attention, the act of seeing, of folding its story into our own. In this way, guest and host exchange something invisible but real. As you lie in stillness, think of this. The universe itself may be a house filled with countless rooms we have not yet entered. From time to time, a door opens and a guest walks through. We may never know their name, their origin, their purpose, but by acknowledging them, by pausing to listen, we honour the vastness of the house we share. Atlas is such a guest, and the question it leaves us with is gentle, like the quiet after a visitor departs. When we meet the next stranger from the stars, will we be ready to welcome them? Across human history, whenever societies have feared that their knowledge might vanish, they have sought ways to preserve it. Scribes carved stone tablets, monks copied manuscripts by candlelight, architects built libraries designed to outlast fire and flood. We have always understood that memory is fragile, that without protection, it dissolves into silence. In this sense, Atlas invites a peculiar reflection. What if it is not simply a fragment of stone, but a library, a vessel of memory drifting in the dark? The idea may sound improbable, yet it follows naturally from our own behaviour. We send probes like Voyager and Pioneer, each carrying symbols and sounds of Earth. We store data in crystals, in DNA strands, even in the patterns of magnetised tape. Why? Because we know that civilizations are temporary. Empires fall, languages fade, monuments crumble, but fragments endure. If we are capable of thinking this way, might not another intelligence, older and perhaps wiser, have done the same on a scale far greater than ours? Imagine a world facing extinction, not by choice but by cosmic accident, a star swelling into a red giant, a planet falling into ecological ruin, a war too vast to survive. In such a moment, its inhabitants might decide to send out vessels of memory. Not grand ships carrying bodies, but quiet objects carrying stories. Stone and ice disguised as comets, each one bearing encoded knowledge, drifting silently through the void, patient enough to wait millions of years. If Atlas were such a vessel, what might it carry? Perhaps the structure of its molecules is not random, but patterned, arranged like the grooves of a record. Perhaps hidden within its minerals are sequences like DNA, telling of biology, history, or philosophy. To us, it looks like noise, but noise is only signal unrecognized. We might be like children holding a book in an unknown script, seeing only marks on paper, not realizing they carry entire worlds. The thought is humbling, that memory could be stored in stone, carried across galaxies, waiting for others to learn how to read. And perhaps humbling too, that we might already be surrounded by such libraries, passing unnoticed, because we have not yet developed the right keys. What we call comets and asteroids could be more than geology, they could be archives. But even if Atlas carries no deliberate record, it still preserves memory of another kind. Its atoms tell stories of their birth in stellar furnaces. Its scars record collisions with other fragments. Its trajectory speaks of gravitational encounters with suns long gone. To study it is to open a book of deep time, a chronicle not written by hand, but inscribed by physics. This kind of memory is older than language, older than biology. It is the memory of matter itself, enduring through silence. Civilizations, too, live and die by memory. What we remember shapes who we are. What we forget shapes who we become. In Atlas, we see a metaphor of forgetting and remembering at cosmic scale. If it is artifact, it remembers deliberately. If it is natural, it remembers unconsciously. In either case, it teaches us that memory is not confined to minds, but woven into matter, into orbits, into the quiet persistence of fragments that outlast their makers. Think of Earth's own monuments, the pyramids, Stonehenge, the cave paintings of Lascaux. All are attempts to speak across time. We build them not only for ourselves, but for those who might come after, for strangers we will never meet. In this, we echo what Atlas might be, a message meant not for contemporaries, but for distant others, unknown and unseen. Perhaps the entire galaxy is filled with such messages, but we, rushing with our short lifespans, rarely pause long enough to recognize them. The question then becomes, what do we owe our own memory? If Atlas is a reminder, it may be telling us to think carefully about how we preserve our story. Will our digital archives endure, or will they fade into unreadable dust? Will our monuments be legible in 10,000 years, or only rubble? If we hope to be remembered, perhaps we too must cast our fragments outward, not for certainty, but for possibility. At night, lying under the stars, the thought expands. Maybe memory itself is the true fabric of the universe, not memory in the sense of human recollection, but the persistence of traces, the way nothing is ever entirely lost, only transformed. Atlas embodies that persistence, whether it carries deliberate knowledge or only the quiet imprint of time. It refuses oblivion. It drifts, it endures, it waits. And as we gaze at it, we cannot help but imagine, if we had only one chance to send a vessel into eternity, what would we place within it? What memory of ourselves would we wish others to find? Would it be our science, our art, our laughter, our sorrows? Would it be the story of who we were, or the story of who we wish to become? Atlas offers no answers, only reflection. It is a fragment, yet it holds the weight of civilizations. It may be natural, yet it teaches us about the impulse to preserve. In its presence, fleeting and silent, we see the fragile endurance of memory itself, and the question it leaves us with is tender as a whisper in the dark. When our own time has passed, what fragments of us will drift onward, carrying our memory into the silence of the stars? When Atlas drifts away and vanishes into the deep, we might think the story ends, but in truth, its passing is only a beginning. For centuries, interstellar visitors were invisible to us, too faint, too fast, too rare to be noticed. It is only in the last decade that our telescopes, sharpened and patient, have been able to see them. Oumuamua was first, Atlas followed, and astronomers now whisper of many more waiting to be found. The universe has not suddenly become more generous. We have simply learned to look. As technology grows, the skies will become more crowded with discovery. New surveys like the Vera Rubin Observatory in Chile are designed to scan the heavens night after night, cataloguing every moving speck. What once slipped past unnoticed will soon be traced in exquisite detail. We may find not one atlas, but dozens, hundreds, perhaps even thousands in our lifetimes. Each will carry its own story, its own trajectory, its own chemistry. Together, they will form a new chapter of astronomy, the science of interstellar encounters. What will this science look like? Perhaps missions will be launched to intercept such travellers. Already, plans exist on paper, spacecraft designed to wait in readiness, capable of launching quickly when a new visitor is spotted. If successful, we may one day send a probe to meet an interstellar object directly, to fly alongside it, to sample its surface, to read its memory more closely than light alone allows. Imagine the moment when a small robotic hand brushes alien dust, collecting grains that have travelled for millions of years. That dust, returned to Earth, could become our first tangible touch of another star. The implications for biology are immense. If organic molecules are found, it will confirm that the seeds of life are scattered not just here, but everywhere. If unusual isotopes appear, it will reveal new chemistry, new stories of stellar birth. And if, though the chance is slim, we discover patterns that suggest intention, then the universe itself will change in our eyes. No longer silent, it will be a place of dialogue, however faint, however ancient. But science is not the only realm touched by such encounters. Culture, too, will transform. Artists will paint interstellar travellers. Poets will write of cosmic guests. Philosophers will debate the meaning of each fragment. Atlas may inspire novels, symphonies, dreams. Just as comets once shaped myth, so too may these new visitors shape imagination, becoming symbols of connection and wonder. The more we meet them, the more deeply they will enter our stories. There will also be questions of responsibility. If we learn to intercept interstellar objects, do we touch them? Do we alter them? Or do we let them pass, preserving their silence? In our eagerness, we may be tempted to treat them as resources, as mines of exotic material, but perhaps we should treat them instead as sacred guests, to be studied gently, reverently, without harm. The ethics of cosmic hospitality may become a field of its own, as real as astrophysics or chemistry. And what of the psychological impact? To live in a world where interstellar visitors are common is to live with a constant reminder of vastness. Each discovery will whisper, "You are not alone. Your world is not isolated. Your story is part of a larger weave." For some, this will bring comfort. For others, unease. But for all, it will expand perspective. Just as the first photographs of Earth from space changed how we saw ourselves, fragile, blue, whole, so too will the steady arrival of interstellar guests reshape our sense of belonging. There may come a time when these encounters are so frequent that they no longer make headlines. Children may grow up taking for granted that fragments from other stars wander through our skies. Perhaps they will learn in school not only about continents and oceans, but about the wider geography of interstellar debris. Atlas will be remembered not as an anomaly, but as an early messenger, the first ripple of a tide that continues to rise. And yet, even if familiarity grows, the mystery will not fade. Each visitor will still carry questions without answers. Each will still leave us with wonder. For the nature of wonder is not in rarity, but in perspective. To look at an object from another star, no matter how many times, is to be reminded that the universe is immense and alive, and that we are part of its living flow. Imagine, if you will, a future not far from now. A spacecraft drifts beside an interstellar traveller, cameras watching as sunlight gleams across alien ice. Signals beam back to Earth, filling screens with images no one has ever seen. People gather, hushed, to watch dust from another star spill into a collector. And in that moment, across cultures and languages, a single thought stirs. We are not isolated. We are participants in something greater. As you close your eyes tonight, picture that future. Picture skies alive with travellers, probes reaching out like open hands, fragments of distant worlds brushing against ours. And let the question linger softly. When the next guest arrives, will we greet it with science alone, or with reverence too? Long before telescopes, before mathematics, before science gave us names like hyperbola and interstellar, People watched the sky with awe and unease. Strange lights crossed the heavens, comets, meteors, wandering stars, and each culture wove stories to explain them. Sometimes they were omens of doom, heralds of plague or war. Sometimes they were messengers of gods bearing secrets or warnings, and sometimes they were ancestors themselves, returning as streaks of fire to remind the living that nothing is ever truly gone. Atlas, drifting quietly through our modern sky, awakens those older echoes. It is a scientific discovery, yes, but also a reminder that we've always read meaning into visitors from above. In Greek myth, Atlas was the Titan condemned to hold up the sky, his figure bent under the weight of heaven, both punishment and endurance. To give this name to an interstellar traveller is poetic, perhaps accidental, perhaps intuitive. The object, too, bears the weight of the sky, carrying across millions of years the burden of mystery. It arrives not as a warrior or a prophet, but as a silent bearer, holding something we cannot yet decipher. Naming it Atlas ties it not only to science but to story, to that ancient human impulse to frame the unknown within myth. Other traditions would see it differently. In China, comets were sometimes called broom stars, sweeping misfortune across the sky. In medieval Europe, they were read as fiery swords, omens of kings falling and empires trembling. The Aztecs linked comets to upheaval, seeing in them the restless energy of gods reshaping the world. To those eyes, Atlas would not be a neutral traveller, but a sign, a cosmic punctuation in history, demanding attention. Even now, though we cloak our thoughts in science, we cannot fully escape this instinct. A visitor from another star still feels like a sign, as though the universe has turned its gaze toward us for a moment. Yet myth is not only fear. Many cultures also saw visitors as gifts. In Polynesian tradition, celestial wayfinders guided navigation, linking people to the sea and stars. In some Native American stories, falling stars carried spiritual messages, signs of connection between the sky and the earth. If Atlas had appeared in those nights, it might have been welcomed as a guide, a thread tying distant realms together. Myth, in this way, is a mirror of our needs. When people feared famine, comets were omens of hunger. When they hoped for renewal, they were heralds of change. Today, in an age of science, we still project our needs onto Atlas. We hope it will teach us about origins, about life, about whether we are alone. In this sense, we are not so different from our ancestors. We still look upward and ask the sky to tell us who we are. The mystery deepens because Atlas itself remains silent. Silence is fertile ground for myth. Had it carried a clear signal, a deliberate beacon, we would read it scientifically, analyse it, categorise it. But its quietness invites imagination. The less we know, the more we dream. Perhaps that is why interstellar visitors stir us so deeply. They are not only objects, but canvases, surfaces upon which we paint our fears and hopes. And myth itself is a kind of science, though spoken in another tongue. Myths are early attempts to order the unknown, to explain the unexplainable, to integrate mystery into meaning. In this sense, to speak of Atlas as an omen, a titan, a messenger, is not to reject science, but to remember that knowledge has always begun with story. Science may give us the equations of its orbit, but myth gives us the shape of its significance. Both are needed. One tells us what Atlas is, the other tells us why it matters. Think of the moment when you hear its name, Atlas. Something stirs beyond data. You imagine shoulders bent under stars, endurance beyond measure, a figure standing at the edge of eternity. You feel, perhaps, that the object itself is enduring something on our behalf. The long, lonely travel, the coal beyond words, the endless silence. In myth, endurance often carries meaning, perhaps in science too, for in its endurance, Atlas carries the possibility of connection, the faint chance that across gulfs of time encounters still happen. At the same time, mystery resists closure. If Atlas is myth, it is an unfinished one. It comes with no explanation, no clear message, only its presence. Like an oracle, it speaks in silence, forcing us to interpret, to wonder. And perhaps that is the gift. Not a definitive answer, but an invitation to dream. As you lie in the hush of night, think of the countless generations who have looked upward, weaving meaning into the wandering lights. They did not have telescopes, yet they had awe. They did not measure spectra, yet they listened to silence. We are their heirs, carrying the same impulse, only with sharper tools. And still, at the core, we remain the same. Creatures who look at the sky and whisper, "What does this mean?" Atlas will leave, as all visitors do, but its memory will linger, both in data and in story. And in that lingering, it ties us to the past, to our ancestors who first told myths of comets, and to the future, to those who will weave new myths of interstellar travellers yet to come. And the question it leaves, quiet as the stars themselves, is this: if every visitor is a mirror, what myth are we writing into the heavens tonight? When Atlas first appeared in the data, it did not make front-page news. The announcement was quiet, tucked into scientific circulars and observatory bulletins, read mostly by those who make a profession of watching the sky. But soon the word spread, first through academic channels, then into wider circles, until the name Atlas began to ripple through headlines, documentaries, forums, even casual conversations under starlight. Humanity, as always, had noticed a visitor, and our responses were as varied as the voices that carried them. For scientists, Atlas was a puzzle and a promise. Teams across the world coordinated observations, pooling data from different telescopes, comparing brightness curves, debating orbital calculations. Papers were written in haste and in caution, some describing it as an unstable comet, others speculating on unusual behaviours. Conferences buzzed with energy. Emails passed through the night. Graduate students stayed awake to process images until dawn. In their hands, Atlas was not myth but measurement, a chance to refine models, to test theories, to sharpen the tools of prediction. The human response here was precision, discipline, the slow turning of questions into knowledge. But science does not exist in isolation. Culture soon picked up the thread, weaving Atlas into broader patterns of imagination. Journalists called it a messenger from another star. Documentaries framed it against questions of life and aliens. Artists painted its path as a brushstroke across the night. On social media, people asked whether it might be a ship, a probe, a sign. Some dismissed it as only ice and rock. Others embraced it as proof of connection. In these voices, Atlas became more than object. It became symbol, reflecting hopes and fears in equal measure. The psychological response is perhaps the most revealing. To many, Atlas stirred a quiet unease. The idea that something from another star could wander so close unsettled the sense of safety, of boundaries. It was a reminder that Earth is not sealed, not protected, but open to visitors, both benign and potentially dangerous. To others, however, Atlas was a source of wonder, a comfort even, evidence that we are part of something larger, that the universe is not empty, but alive with exchange. For some, fear, for others, belonging. The duality is deeply human. Consider how quickly Atlas entered the realm of fiction. Writers folded it into stories of contact and mystery. Films began to echo its shape, its name, its possibility. In classrooms, children drew comets with tails like silver ribbons, asked their teachers whether aliens might be watching. In conversations at dinner tables, people speculated, smiled, or shrugged. The response was not uniform, but it was shared. Atlas had touched imagination across cultures. Even religion, in subtle ways, felt its presence. For those inclined to see the hand of the divine in the heavens, Atlas was another sign that creation is vaster than we know. Sermons mentioned it in passing. Spiritual seekers meditated on its silence. The sky has always been a canvas for faith, and a visitor from another star fits easily into that long tradition. And then there is art. Painters imagined Atlas as a glowing shard tumbling through cosmic seas. Poets wrote verses about its loneliness, its endurance, its fragile beauty. Musicians composed pieces that mirrored its slow arc, notes rising and fading, like a body passing near the sun. Atlas, without sound of its own, gave rise to new sounds. Without language, gave rise to new words. This is perhaps the deepest form of human response, to take the silent and give it voice. The collective response also reveals something about our stage of history. 1,000 years ago, Atlas would have been myth, omen, prophecy. 100 years ago, it might have been curiosity, noted and then forgotten. Today, it becomes a nexus where science, culture, and imagination converge. We live in an age where telescopes capture its light, satellites track its motion, and at the same time, millions share images of it online, speculate in forums, dream in tandem. The response is not localized but global, as if Atlas were reminding us not only of cosmic unity, but of human unity as well. There is another subtler response: silence. For every voice raised in wonder or fear, countless others simply carried on, indifferent. Atlas crossed their sky unnoticed, unremarked, part of the vast background of life. And yet, even this indifference is a kind of response, a reminder that not all guests are acknowledged, not all signs are seen. The cosmos is filled with visitors, and we notice only a few. Our attention is selective, fragile, fleeting. And perhaps that is the lesson Atlas leaves, that response itself matters. To pay attention is to bring the universe into intimacy. To look up and see, even briefly, is to enter a relationship with the stars. In responding, whether through science, story, fear, or art, we do not only interpret Atlas, we interpret ourselves. Each reaction reveals what we value, what we long for, what we resist. Atlas is a mirror, but it is also a test. How do we greet the unexpected? As you rest tonight, imagine those many layers of response: scientists at their instruments, children drawing comets, poets writing lines in dim light, believers whispering prayers, skeptics shaking their heads, dreamers watching the sky in silence. All are part of a single tapestry, woven around the faint thread of a traveller from another star. And the question it leaves is as open as the night itself. When the next visitor arrives, how will we choose to respond? At last, the traveller begins to fade. Night after night, its light grows fainter, its arc stretches farther, until even the most patient telescopes can no longer hold it in their gaze. Atlas continues outward, beyond the planets, beyond the Kuiper belt, past the frozen shell of the Oort cloud, into the dark that swallows all but the brightest stars. We are left on our shore, watching the wake of a ship that has already vanished into fog. There is a quiet sadness in this departure. To watch something arrive is to feel the thrill of encounter, to sense possibility opening like a door. To watch it leave is to feel the door close again, leaving only memory. And yet, this is the rhythm of the cosmos, arrivals and departures, appearances and vanishings, a dance where permanence is rare and transience is the rule. Atlas reminds us that we live not in a world of static certainties, but in a universe of flowing, passing, drifting. Still, the gift remains. Atlas may be gone, but the questions it left linger. Was it stone or artifact, seed or message, silence or song? We cannot answer, and perhaps we never will, but to ask is already to change. Questions stretch the mind, widen the horizon, teach us to live with mystery. In this sense, the absence of answers is not a loss but a form of abundance, leaving us with space to imagine, to dream, to listen more carefully for the next whisper. There is also a gentler perspective. Atlas did not come to tell us something specific, it came simply by being. Its presence showed us that the galaxy is not closed, that our skies are open to travellers, that we are part of a circulation wider than our comprehension. Whether or not it carried memory or message, it carried truth, that connection is possible, that distances can be crossed, that isolation is an illusion. And so, as we look back at its passing, we might also look inward. What have we learned of ourselves? That we are curious, restless, eager to find meaning, that we see mirrors everywhere, in fragments of ice, in the silence of space, in the possibility of others, that we long to be connected, to be remembered, to belong. In Atlas, we saw both the alien and the familiar, both the other and ourselves. Perhaps this is the true ending. Not knowledge, but reflection. To realise that the universe does not owe us answers, but it offers us encounters. Some are brief, some are silent, some are ambiguous, yet all are invitations to expand. Atlas was one such invitation, drifting past like a stranger, whose face we will never know, yet whose presence changed us nonetheless. In mythology, the Titan Atlas held up the sky so that others might live beneath it. In astronomy, 3i Atlas crossed our sky so that we might be reminded of its vastness. In both stories, Atlas is endurance, of strength, of mystery, of patience, and when it leaves, it does not abandon us. It leaves us with the gift of perspective, the reminder that we are part of something immense, fragile, and alive. So tonight, as you settle into rest, imagine that faint light still moving outward, slow but steady, carrying its silence into the depths. Imagine it passing through interstellar darkness, perhaps one day grazing another system, another world, another gaze. Somewhere far in the future, another species might wander about it as we have, asking their own questions, weaving their own myths. In that way, Atlas is not only ours, it belongs to all who notice, all who dream. And perhaps that is the most comforting thought of all, that across time and space, civilizations unknown to each other may share a common experience, the moment of looking up, seeing a visitor, and wondering. Wonder becomes the bridge, the dialogue, the thread uniting beings who will never meet. Atlas departs, but its echo remains, not in answers, but in questions, not in certainty, but in possibility. And as it fades into the dark, it leaves us with one last gift, the awareness that even in silence, we are part of a conversation as old as the stars. So let the question rest with you tonight, soft as breath. What if 3i Atlas was not only a fragment of stone, but a greeting? And what if in watching it pass, we have already answered by noticing, by wondering, by dreaming beneath the arc of its path.